Welcome back to the Tip of the Iceberg podcast, brought to you as always by the Hockey Podcast Network. We are joined by a very special guest right now, writer and analyst for DK Pittsburgh Sports. Please welcome onto the show, Danny Shirey. How's it going, Danny?
I'm doing great, guys, and it's pretty hard to complain with how the Penguins have been playing recently, going on the winning streak, and Crosby's starting to come around, and he's piling up those multi-point performances, and Gensel's carrying off right where he was before he ended up having that hand injury. So it's hard to find much to complain about on my end.
It's hard to complain about anything when you're in a 9-game winning streak.
Most definitely.
I think it's funny too because that 9-game winning streak, when you look at it, 7 of the 9 games, the Penguins held their opponents to under 3 goals. And that's an underrated part of the Penguins game right now is the fact that they play so well defensively. Now, we know Marcus Pettersson's game is always kind of lead defense first, but his D partner, John Marino, has been tasked by the coaching staff, it almost seems like, to take that same approach this season. Danny, how do you evaluate John Marino's year so far?
Yeah, so it's Marino. Looking at Marino now, I think a lot of Pens fans, when he first came in and found that immediate success, a lot of people thought that, this is a guy that might be able to take over for Letang as the number one guy here in a few years. And I think everybody might have jumped the gun a little bit on that one, but he's still been a pretty solid defensive player this year, and not to the lengthy extents that we saw during his rookie season. But his partnership with Pettersson, they've been together for pretty much the entire time he's been here, and we know that they're going to have those solid defensive results. The thing that I'd like to see a little bit more from Marino, and he has been pretty good at transitioning the puck up ice, but I'd like to see a little bit more offensive flair from him, if you will. I mean, it's not necessarily something where I'm looking for him to put up a bunch of points or anything like that, but I think there's another element to his game, and we kind of saw that. I believe it was against San Jose, where he kind of walked the blue line and rushed down into the slot and tried to make a pass to the back door. So those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for from Marino offensively, but it's tough to complain about too much when he's still out there for a positive share of shot attempts, of scoring chances, expected goals, and the Penguins are even controlling the hefty share of just on ice goals when he's out there. So I'm not necessarily sure that he's ever going to develop into that guy that's going to be able to take over as the number one for Letang, but he's definitely been solid.
Yeah, and I'm the one on this podcast who's still trying to gain their grasp on analytics. So apologies now if I sound ignorant or anything, but like I said, as I'm still trying to gain that grasp, it's what can be said about Evan Rodriguez analytically this year, aside from just being the breakout star that he already has been.
Well, analytically, I mean, he's been one of the best players in the NHL this year, and that's at both ends of the ice. We've seen his ability to put the puck in the back of the net as well as drive chances. We've seen a number of beautiful feeds from him this year that have led to goals as well, where he's flown into the offensive zone and threatened to shoot. And one of the things I love most about him is that he's always got the puck in his hip pocket, which essentially is a threat to move the puck at any time, whether it be a shot or a pass. And he's really good about hiding what he's going to do, and whatever the defense gives him, he'll take. And he's been really, really good at finding those seams as well as getting those shots off. But I've been especially encouraged with his defensive play as well, because it's kind of flying under the radar. But with how good he's been at transitioning the puck up ice and cycling the puck in the offensive zone, is that the Penguins aren't spending a whole lot of time in the D zone, and that's leading to pretty solid defensive impacts. And analytically speaking, I think defense kind of has some blurred lines, because the guy that's in the defensive zone making stick checks and intercepting passes might not always have strong defensive impacts, where guys who might not be as good at those certain niche skills have better impacts because they can keep the puck away from their own end. And that's something that Rodriguez has done really well with this year.
I mean, you've even seen his confidence. What was it, last Wednesday or this past Wednesday when they played the Blues? He did a spinorama pass when nobody was around him. It seemed like for no reason. It's just the confidence that he has to go out there and do random things and do them well. And then also, of course, his shot has just been an absolute revelation this season.
Yeah, no doubt, and his skating is super strong too. That was something that I kind of overlooked his first couple seasons here, but you're absolutely right that now that he's playing with that confidence, not only with the puck on his stick, but he's using his skating and his strong edges to his ability too. Like you said, with those, he's pulled that spinorama move quite a few times this year, and that no player that has any inkling of doubt in his abilities is going to even attempt to make that move. So I definitely think that speaks to how he feels about his game and what he knows he can bring to the table.
Mm. I want to shift focus a little bit to a player that's not currently in the lineup, and that's Jason Zucker. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about him, highs and lows and everything in between. He's currently on the shelf due to the lower body injury, but when he returns, where do you think he conceivably slots in if this team is all healthy? And that is an if.
So since Zucker got here, I've probably been one of his bigger proponents. We saw the success that he had alongside Crosby in those 12 games he played in the season that he was acquired. But the funny thing about Zucker to me is that last year his on ice metrics in terms of chances at both ends of the ice were terrible. Like the Penguins controlled like something like 40% of the expected goals in his however many hundreds of minutes of time on ice last year, and that's just not going to cut it for a guy that's playing second line minutes with Evgeny Malkin. But the thing with it was that he was still scoring goals at a decent rate, even if those on ice metrics weren't great. This year, however, the on ice metrics have been pretty superb, and he hasn't been able to put the puck in the back of the net. And with the price tag that he comes along with, if he's not putting the puck in the back of the net, it's a pretty tough pill to swallow. So it really just depends. I'm not going to clamor for him to get any more time with Crosby just because Rust has what is it, 5 goals in his past 2 games since returning alongside Crosby, and we also saw what Rodriguez could do alongside him too. I don't think that Zucker's a great fit alongside Malkin. I think their styles really just don't gel all that well. So I think you just got to find a spot for him on that third line whenever he's healthy. But otherwise, they Hextall better be looking into finding a taker for him to get him out of there, because with and even seeing guys like Casper Bjorkquist who've stepped up, I'm not saying that he's as good of a player as Zucker, but if you're taking his, entry level contract versus Zucker's $5.5 million that he's making, I'll take that trade off every day.
You figured he'd be looking for a trade, and I mean, the trade of Sam Lafferty seems to be the most recent news that we've had as of recording this interview, at least. But from your perspective, what is your immediate reactions of that trade of losing Lafferty and gaining an Alex Nylander? And everyone take this with a grain of salt, because this is a guy that said Jeff Carter was a bad trade.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of Lafferty at all. We know that he's a really fast skater and a strong skater, and we've seen some of that playmaking upside that he has. But for a guy like him, he was never going to see those middle 6 minutes that a guy with his skill set might be able to flourish. And the Penguins asked him to kind of play like that Tanev role, to just kind of go out there and wreak havoc and create chaos and go bang bodies. But the way Lafferty went about it, I constantly saw him doing it at the wrong times and taking himself out of position to go throw those hits. And then next thing you know, the opposition's going the other way on an odd man rush. So I was extremely pleased that they found a taker for him, just so that we don't have to watch him anymore. And the fact that they were able to get a former top 10 pick in return for him is just astounding. But as far as Nylander is concerned, he's not going to be anything close to a top 10 pick. He's kind of just been okay down in the minors, and he hasn't even played in the NHL in a couple of seasons. So I kind of think he's a bit of an unknown right now. But it's certainly a positive if Lafferty's gone and you've got a guy that at least has that pedigree and that upside that comes along with being a top 10 pick.
One of the biggest storylines all season long has been Casey DeSmith and whether or not he still has what it takes to be the backup goaltender for this team. Now, you'll look at the performances that he had this past week. How much longer do you see the Penguins sticking with DeSmith right behind Tristan Jarry?
If you would have asked me that before the St. Louis game, I probably would have told you they're going to end up sticking with him for a while. But with the short leash that Sullivan gave him during that St. Louis game, as soon as I saw Jari coming in, I was like, oh, his days are numbered here. And even after the game, I remember Sullivan said something along the lines of, we still believe, we're still confident in him. We still believe he's a quality goaltender, but we know that Sullivan's never the kind of coach that's going to go and throw his players under the bus. Mm-hmm. So I'd be surprised if he's still the Penguins backup past the trade deadline. Putting an exact date on when he might be gone, I'm not exactly sure, but I'd be shocked if he's here by the end of the season.
Is a guy like Louis Domingue a capable replacement for one?
Probably not, but he's at least worth a look because, I think you said it at the start of the show where 7 of the Penguins' last 9 games, they've given up 2 or fewer goals, and the 2 games in which they didn't, DeSmith started, and that's been a common theme all season. So, Domingue is worth a look. His body of work in the NHL hasn't been all that great, even though he did go on that. He won a bunch of games with Tampa a few years ago. But if you looked at the quality of shots he was facing versus the actual goals he was giving up, he was still below water in terms of that. So I'm not necessarily holding my breath thinking that Domingue can show up and be a capable backup. But like I said, he's got to be worth a look at this point.
Yeah. So when would you start to consider this team a legitimate cup contender? And does the past few playoff years, put a stain on those thoughts?
The only thing from the previous postseasons that would put a stain on those thoughts was Tristan Jarry, and he's been lights out this season. So I've been telling everybody that I'm still not going to fully trust him until I see him in the postseason. But he really has been fantastic this year. But right now, the Penguins still don't even have Malkin back, and they're playing some of the best hockey across the NHL, and getting a future Hall of Fame talent back in the lineup, even if he's, well past his prime, that's going to add another element and another dynamic to the Penguins attack. So I'm a believer that this team can make a run in the postseason. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're going to make it to the final or go on and win the cup just because, we've seen good teams lose to far weaker teams in a 6-game sample. That's just hockey. You see those giant luck swings and that percentage luck go in those short samples. But with the way the Penguins have played, with the way they attack and the way that they've been insulating the high danger areas in their own end, I have no reason to believe that this isn't a team that can't win come playoff time.
One last quick question for you, Danny. The Penguins this week are going to go into their Western California road trip. The last time they did it, they went 0-3 and got blown out in a couple of those games. Do you think they improve on that this time around?
I would think so, because I haven't looked at the exact numbers, but I feel like the Penguins have always played pretty well out west, whether it be out in California or up in Canada. But, just with the way they've been rolling, I have no reason to – I'm not going to sit here and say they're just going to win every game on that trip. But, with the way they've been playing, I still think that they can take, 4 or 5 out of every 6 points that they have to earn in the standings. And, I'm not a huge fan of many of the teams out west either. I think the East is a far superior conference, and I think we see some of those Western teams have a little bit of a more inflated point total or more inflated results just because of the weaker competition that they see on a more frequent basis. So I would have pretty strong vindication that it'll be a good trip for the Penguins.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Danny Shirey. We'll give you a couple minutes here. What's coming up for you at DK Pittsburgh Sports?
Yeah, so every Thursday I have the Drive to the Net column drops. It's a weekly analysis. I'll take a look at individual players, mechanics, team level stuff, basically whatever's going on, and whatever I think is worth taking a look at. I'll try and go in depth as I can and share my insights and knowledge and try and help people understand the game better and understand a lot of those little things that happen so quickly. But on top of that, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter at Danny Shirey PGH, you can keep up with all my hockey content there. I tweet out charts, graphs, tweet out my articles. I was doing video breakdowns as well, but I kind of put that on the back burner. I'm hoping to get back to that soon. So yeah.
Well, one last time, Danny, thank you so much for joining us.
Yep. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.